Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Well, today I'm going to discuss about shares. This topic is very much important and relevant for the students of intermediate, graduations, masters, and even for the students of MBA. The students of commerce should know the basic concept and should know the meaning of shares. The shares is very much relevant and important aspect for the students of commerce. Let us take an example. Suppose this is a company ABC. Okay, this company has an authorized capital of rupees 10 lakhs. All right, as we know that to start a company there has to be a shareholders. Let us assume that X, Y, and Z are the three shareholders of this company. Now they wanted to convert their authorized capital in the form of shares. Now they have considered the price of each shares as rupees 10. Now let us divide the authorized capital, that is 10 lakhs divided by 10 is equal to 1 lakhs shares. It means the total shares of ABC company is 1 lakhs. Now they may issue 50,000 of shares to the public. Okay, and they may keep themselves 50,000 shares. Rest of the shares will be taken care by all the partners. They may issue 50,000 shares to the public through IPO. We call it initial public offering, and this can be purchased by the various publics who wants to invest money in the company so-called ABC. Once the general public purchase the shares from this company, they will be called as a what? Shareholders. Anyone, okay, the person who purchased shares from the public, they will be considered as a shareholders. Now the shares are divided into two forms. One is preference shares and another is equity shares. Now let us learn what is preference shares. The preference shares has got two rights. Okay, there are two rights for the preference shareholders. Now the first is to have a fixed dividend. Okay, and the second is can participate during the liquidations. Okay, during the liquidations of the company, they can participate in the asset of the company. It means during the shutting down of their company, the preference shareholder has the right to participate in the asset of the company. Another, we have an equity shares. We'll discuss in the next slide. Suppose Mr. Y is an equity shareholder, whereas Mr. Z is an holder of preference shares. Now the rate of dividend are fixed in case of preference shareholders, but in case of equity shareholders the rate of dividend are not fixed. It depends on the surplus of the company. If the company has got sufficient surplus, then only the equity shareholders are entitled to have a dividend. Okay, now the rate of dividend are always fixed in case of preference shares, but in case of equity shareholders they may get a dividend if there is a sufficient surplus or sufficient profit during the financial year. Next we have preference shares. Now what do you mean by preference shares? Preference shares are those shares where the preference shareholders has got the right to get the dividend before giving dividend to the shareholders. Okay, shareholders, before the dividend are given to the equity shareholders, the dividend are first of all paid to the preference shareholders, as the preference shareholders has got the fixed rate of dividend. Now questions may arise, why the equity shareholder gets dividend after the dividend are paid to the equity after the dividend are paid to the preference shareholders? Because equity shareholders are the owners of the company. That's why the first preference are given to the preference shareholder. The next point is winding up. When the companies are closed down, the first preference are given to the preference shareholders. Now what are the various preference that the preference shareholder can have? The first is they can participate in the asset of the company. All their dues are paid first of all, okay? Before the payment are made to the equity shareholders, all the dues or all the area are paid to the preference shareholders. Not only preference shareholders, even the external creditors, okay? External creditors are paid first of all. After the payment of all the liabilities to the external creditors, to the preference shareholders, to the debentures, the remaining part of the asset or the remaining part of the profits are divided among the equity shareholders. The next point is voting right. The preference shareholder does not have voting right, whereas the equity shareholder has got the voting rights. They can elect the board of director, okay? The board of director are elected by the equity shareholders. Even all the managers, okay, managers, CEO are being appointed by the equity shareholders. So these are the some power and the functions that are granted to the various equity shareholders. The preference shareholders cannot vote or they cannot elect any board of directors or any managers of the company. The next point is participation in the management. They cannot participate in any decisions making process, especially for the company, whereas they are the sole authority to participate in the management of the company, okay? When we talk about participations, as I have said in the previous slide, that they can elect the board of director, okay, CEO and so on. It is the equity shareholders who are entitled to appoint all those, management of the company. The next point is stock exchange. The preference share are not traded at stock exchange, okay? The preference shares are not traded at stock exchange, whereas the equity shares are traded at stock exchange. It means in stock exchange the equity shares are always traded. It means the buying and selling of equity shares takes place in the stock exchange, whereas the preference shares does not have the right or does not have any preferential right to be traded on stock exchange. Then who are allowed to have a preference shares? The preference shares are mainly given to the various financial institutions, okay? The financial institutions has the preference to have a preference shares, and the company always try to have the preference shares to the various institutions, financial institutions or various organizations. It is not commonly issued for the general public. Now let us talk about equity shares. Now the person who hold equity shares, they are known as what? Equity shares holders, okay? And we must remember that they are the owners of the company or any business entity. Now equity shares, okay, equity shares are traded at stock exchange. At stock exchange the equity shares are always bought and sold. And in the previous slide I have talked the various rights of equity shares. Since equity shares are traded at stock exchange, it is transferable. Okay, transferable. It can be transferred from one person to another. It can be transferred from one person to another person. Suppose Mr. A has transferred his shares to Mr. B, then Mr. B will become the equity shareholders and he will be called as the owners of any business entity or any company. Now let us discuss the various types of preference shares. The first is cumulative and non-cumulative preference shares. Now let us assume with an example. Suppose in 2016 Mr. Y is a preference shareholders. Mr. Y has not received a dividend. In the year 2017 also Mr. Y has not received a dividend, but in the year 2018 he has received a dividend along with all the arrear of 2016 and 17 including 2018. It means Mr. Y will receive a dividend for the year 2016 plus 2017 plus 2018. It means Mr. Y will accumulate all the arrear of dividend he is supposed to receive in the year 2016, 17 and 18. So this is the right of preference shareholders in case of cumulative preference shares. Whereas in case of non-cumulative preference shares, for the year 2016, for the year 2017 and for the year 2018, Mr. Y will not receive any dividend for 2016 and 17. But in the year 2019, if the company earned sufficient profit, then in that case Mr. Y will receive a dividend for only 2019, not the arrear of 2016, 17 and 18. The accumulated arrear, okay, the accumulated arrear will not be paid to the preference shareholders in case of non-cumulative preference shares. Only the dividend of the financial year where the company has earned profit will be paid to the cumulative preference shareholders. The next preference shares is convertible and non-convertible preference shares. Now preference shares are converted into equity shares after certain years, maybe 10 years. Okay, the preference shares can be converted into an equity shares after 10 years, maybe 20 years. It depends on the way you have made an agreement with the company. It means there is a preferential right to be converted into the equity shares after a certain period of time. And once the preference shares are converted into equity shares, then they will be called as a what? Equity shareholders. Okay, and they will be the owners of the company and they can participate in the management of the company. They can elect the board of director, CEO and the managers of the company. But in case of non-convertible preference shares, the person who has invested preference shares in the form of non-convertible, they will remain always as a preference shareholders. They are not going to be converted in the form of equity shares throughout the company's life. It means for the whole period till the existence of the company, their preference share will be remain as preference shares. They cannot be converted into the equity share or equity shareholders. The next preference shares is participating and non-participating. Now when we talk about participating preference shareholders, it means suppose the preference shares has got a 10% dividend on the amount of money that they have invested. But when any company earns surplus, okay, when any company has got sufficient amount of profit and they have earn a huge amount of surplus, in that case the preference shareholders may get more than the 20% of dividend. Okay, 20% of dividend, they may be allotted more than the fixed rate of dividend that they have. Why? Because they have invested their shares in participating. That's why they can participate in the surplus of the company. Next, we have a non-participating. If any investors has invested in non-participating preference shares, their amount of dividend will remain fixed. It means the rate of dividend will always remain fixed. No matter how much the company earn profit or surplus, it doesn't matter. Their rate of dividend will always remain as fixed. So this is the differences between the participating debentures or preference shares and non-participating preference shares. The next preference share is redeemable and irredeemable. Redeemable can be redeemed, redeem after a fix or after a certain period of time. It means if the company, suppose ABC is a company and Mr. Y has invested 10 lakhs in the form of redeemable preference shares. When company earn sufficient profit and has a surplus, then after certain period of time the company may pay back the preference shares of rupees 10 lakhs to Mr. Y. The company has a privilege to redeem the preference shares when they required. Whereas in case of irredeemable, the preference shares cannot be redeemed. Cannot be redeemed throughout the life of the company. It will remain till the continuations of the company. So these are the some types of preference shares, and this type of questions are said in various exams, even for the higher secondary students, for graduation, masters, for the MBAs. The notes for these explanations are given at the last of the video, so you can write it down and you can copy it in your copy. Now let us discuss about the debentures. Now what is the debentures? Let's see the definitions. A document or a certificate issued by the company under the common seal as acknowledgement of debt. The holder of debenture certificate are called as a debentures holder. It means the person who hold a debentures certificate, they are called what? Debentures holder. And remember that it is an acknowledgement of debt having a common seal. It is a document where the company acknowledges that particular individual has invested money in the form of debentures in their company. Now let us discuss the different types of debentures. The first is secured debentures and unsecured debentures. Now what are those secured debentures? This type of debentures are created on the asset of the company. It means the secured debentures are created on collateral securities. It means, for example, Mr. A has invested money to A, B, C company in the form of debentures. Then Mr. A will invest money, for example, of rupees 10,000 in ABC company in the name of debentures. Now Mr. A will invest money against the collateral securities. It means he will ask the company to mortgage some of the asset, maybe building. The company will have a building like machine. In his name, the company will have to issue a collateral securities to Mr. A. Then only Mr. A will invest in the name of secured debentures. Now if any company fails to pay the interest to the debenture holders, in that case Mr. A may sell the building or the machines against the amount that he has invested in the company. So this is called a secured debentures. The debentures holder are entitled to have an interest. Remember, they get an interest of fixed rate. The interest rate may be paid, fixed rate of interest may be 10%. Whereas in case of unsecured debentures, if default are created by the company, it means if any company happen to lose or not in a profit conditions, in that case, if the company unable to pay the interest to the debentures holder, in that case there is no any collateral securities, or there is no any asset for that individual who has invested debentures in the name of unsecured debentures. There is no securities or any collateral asset for the amount that Mr. X or Y has invested in the name of unsecured debentures. The next debentures is convertible debentures and non-convertible debentures. Now convertible debentures are those debentures which can be easily converted into equity shares. Okay, now as we know that the debentures holders are the creditors of the company, because they have invested their money in a company, that's why they are called what? Creditors of the business or creditors of the company. And the debentures holder gets a fixed interest rate. Okay, the rate of interest is fixed especially for the debentures holder. Now since the investors has invested in the name of convertible, then after few years, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, or after a certain fixed terms, the debentures can be easily converted into equity shares. Once the debentures are converted into equity shares, the debentures holder will also be converted as a equity share holder. It means he will become the owners of that particular company where he has invested. And in case of non-convertible debentures, the debentures holders will remain as a creditors of the company. He will never become the equity shareholders, or he cannot convert his debentures in the form of equity shares. This is the basic differences between the convertible debentures and non-convertible debentures. The next debentures is registered debentures and bearer debentures. Now what do you mean by registered debentures? Now registered debentures are those debentures where the debentures holder names are completely recorded or registered in the register of books of the company. It means, for example, Mr. Y has invested money in the form of debentures. Alright, now all the detailed informations of Mr. Y will be recorded in the books of debentures of company, like his names, okay, name, address, occupations, nominees, okay, phone number, email, all the detailed informations of Mr. Y will be recorded in the books of register of debentures of company. When he wants to transfer his debentures, then he will have to go through various formalities and procedures to transfer his debentures to his family, to family or anyone. Okay, if he likes to transfer his debentures to someone, then he will have to go through various formalities and various procedures in order to transfer his debentures from one person to another person. But in case of bearer debentures, okay, he or she doesn't need any formalities or procedures to transfer his debentures from one person to another person. Simply if he submit his debenture certificate, or if he deliver his debenture certificate to someone, maybe Mr. X, in that case Mr. X will be considered as a debentures holders. There is no any formalities, just you need to transfer your debenture certificate, then the right of debentures will be transferred to Mr. X, and Mr. X will be considered as a what? Debentures holders. So these are the some explanations regarding the various types of debentures. So these are the some explanations for the different types of debentures and like preference shares. And these topics are very much relevant for your examinations point of view. Okay, the notes for all those explanations will be given in the next slide, and especially for the preference shares and regarding debentures I will provide the notes in the next video that I'm going to upload. Okay, so these are the explanations of different types of preference shares. As I have explained earlier, the cumulative and non-cumulative preference shares. After that, like convertible and non-convertible preference shares, where we can convert the preference shares into an equity shares within a specific period of time, whereas non-convertible preference shares means where the holders of non-convertible preference shares have no right for such conversions. And the next we have like redeemable and irredeemable preference shares, which can be redeemed within some fixed period of time, whereas irredeemable uh, preference shares are those shares which cannot be redeemed throughout the life of the company. So thank you for watching the video, and once again I would like to request our students to write all those notes that I have given and try to understand the explanations. And if you have any problem in understanding the concept that I have explained to all of you, so you can personally contact to me, and you can DM me at any time and any moment. Thank you. Have a nice day and take care.